Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. Today is a Comprehensivist Wednesdays that we do in collaboration with the Greater Philadelphia Thinking Society. CJ is going to be finally back next Wednesday. You know, it's after a long absence, so it's going to be wonderful. So don't miss that. But today it's going to be Mike, and the format is Mike is going to make a presentation. Then we're going to go into the breakout rooms, and then we're going to come back to discuss the topic. All right. So Mike, what are we talking about today?
Well, Shrikant, hello, everyone. Welcome. We titled tonight's meetup, All the World's a Stage, Are You Ready to Play? And essentially, we're going to be talking about a couple of things. One, the importance of being an active participant in a format like this, and then talking about where we are as a group on the spectrum in terms of, are we producing the content or are we consuming the content? And I think in a normal distribution, you should be spotted in different places. There should be points in your life where you are totally consuming something for entertainment purposes, where you're not dissecting it, you're sitting back, you're not putting any thought into it, it's total consumption. And then there could be a part of your life where maybe you're being paid to produce that content. For example, a professional musician. So you are on the literal stage. And then, chat a little bit about everything in between. What I've done this time, very similar to what I've done in the past, is I've looked at the topic through the eyes of a student here at 52 Living Ideas. So as I'm looking at all the faces here, I'm looking at some of you as fellow students, and then some of you as faculty. So what I'm basically going to do is take this topic, share a few of the key points that I thought about as a student, give you my personal takeaways, and then kind of give us some things to think about as we head into the breakout rooms. So I'd like to start out by talking about the value of participation. So again, thinking as a student, I look back in my life, and it's very strange. So I became a teacher, and I've been in front of students for over 30 years. But yet in high school, I would not read in front of the class. I actually failed an English class because the teacher said part of your grade depends on an oral presentation. I basically said, I ain't doing it. And I failed the class. Fast forward, don't ask how it happens, but I became a teacher and became very comfortable in the classroom. And that helped me in a way where I think the idea of your voice being heard, the audible voice, is so important with children to start, much less ourselves. But from my perspective, so the people that don't know me, I'm a chess teacher, and I've taught in so many different capacities. So I will walk into a classroom of, say, fifth graders, and I don't know who's in front of me. But with enough experience, you can pick out right away who might be more rambunctious, who might be a wise guy. But you also pick up pretty quickly people that are a little shy. The value that I have gotten of just getting children to hear their own voices in a lecture that I'm giving is absolutely incredible. Now, there are some tricks of how to achieve that. So I walk into a classroom and I see a kid sitting off to the side, and I'm using just my experience as a teacher, and I go, okay, that kid is shy. But the kid is wearing a Yankee jersey. I'm a Met fan. So I could say to that kid, are you a Yankee fan? And if the kid responds proudly, yes, I'm a Yankee fan, now I've already engaged the kid, and the student has heard their own voice. But it gets a little better because now I have a trick up my sleeve for future classes. What do I mean by that? If it turns out that this kid doesn't know a hoot or give a darn about chess, I still have something of a connection with the student where I could ask that student a question that is not chess related in the classroom. And when that student responds to me, there's actually a sense of empowerment between myself and that student because we're both experts on the subject. So in front of all of his or her classmates, the audible voice has elevated that student. You would be amazed at how many times that little interaction has led for me to have a successful interaction with chess with that student. So that's the voice being heard. So let's flip that to 52 Living Ideas. So on Mondays, we have poetry meetups. And prior to me taking these meetups with Maritza, I know or knew absolutely nothing about poetry. It turns out having her ask the participants to read a poem in their own voice, it's absolutely amazing how much glue that gave me and comfort to return to the next class. What also happens in that meetup that I think dovetails nicely with tonight's topic is we write collaborative poems together. So we need to take some chances, right? Because we're just given a topic, and then we're asked to go into a breakout room and then throw a line in and try to make the lines fit with other people that were there. But it takes, again, a little bit of courage for that process to take place. There are poets there. So you see some of them, the lines just come right out of their mouths, but not for all of us. But again, it's that first step of hearing the voice of how it elevates the process. What makes it even better is when it's done. So, you think about, you're putting this, what seems to be a mismatch of all these lines that are kind of floating around a topic. And yet, when they're put into a certain order, and then the presenter reads them out loud, what happens? It's the voice. It's the active participating voice that completely changes the feel of the poem. I sit back and I watch her or Allison or any of the other facilitators read the poem with the human voice. And it is amazing of how much it's elevated. So my first observation from delving into this, it's the importance of participation. I don't want to be the person at the table at the wedding, the only person left that's not dancing. I'm not a very good dancer, but that feeling, I see Allison smiling, but I know Allison is quite the dancer. Allison, I am assuming if you and I were at a wedding together, that I am not going to stay seated very long. But it's really the feeling that I want to hone in on. You know that feeling when you're not participating and you feel that you should? Well, there's discomfort there. In your mind, you've already created an atmosphere of discomfort. Oh, if I get on the dance floor, I'm going to look funny. I'm a bald chess teacher. How well do you expect me to dance? Maybe not well at all, but why should that be in my head? If I create that discomfort, is it any worse than the discomfort of being the only one at the table? No, it's not. So having delved into this topic a little bit, one of the first things I walked away with is wanting people to push me to participate and vice versa. The second area or idea that I came about was the duality between the consumer and the producer of the creative process. I can also use different words. I can talk about the performer on the stage and the audience. And what I found there was a terrific interplay there. Let's take the theater, for example. If you walk into the theater, and I'll call that the literal stage, right? There is a stage with actors performing, but surrounding that performance is an enormous amount of creativity, of participation that you don't see on the stage. Sound, lighting, the playwright, the director, and I could go on and on and on. They are all participating, but they are part of the producing of the content. In the audience sits the spectator, which for you, all of you now that I'm looking at, have become spectators for the moment. But just like here and in that theater, the audience can also be an active participant. And you do that by working on your chops. If you go to the theater for the first time and you know nothing about the theater, you're probably going to sit there and be a full consumer of the content, correct? But what if you have an interest in theater that goes past that, where you've actually done a lot of reading, you know a lot of playwrights? Doesn't that change the entire process for you and that audience? And obviously, the performers themselves are also working on their chops. The better they get at the act, the better you receive it as the audience. And it just keeps moving in a circular motion. The more astute the audience, then the more elevated the performance becomes in their eyes. So really the second thing that kind of hit me is active participation is not just from the performer. You can also work on it from your seat. And I thought about the other meetups that are floating around here, especially the ones that Shrikant's doing on conversation, because there's also a skill set between the speaker and the listener, right? It's kind of the same process. Do you want to be only participating 10% of the time in conversation? Don't you get the same feeling sometimes here at these meetups or in a similar case where somebody's making a point and maybe they just made a point that you thought was kind of spot on to what you had, but what you were thinking, maybe you thought it was either a little controversial, off topic. So what did you do? You zipped it. No good, no good. You need to push that. So second observation, there is a skill set that can be honed by both the participant of the creative process and the producer. What I'd like to do is take a very, very short break, and I want to do an informal poll. If you could access your chat for me and write the following: let me know in your life the areas where you are producing the most creative content. I'll give you a couple of examples. Let's say that you are in charge of presenting at meetings at work and you're playing the violin on the weekend. So I think you could argue that both of those cases are extremely, they match that, right? So for me, I'm into improv, very good show. I'm into improv comedy and I teach and play chess. So I would put chess teacher, improvisational comedy. Please don't put more than 2, because if you put more than 2, wow, that's very impressive, number one. So you could just write down one example, but if it is more than 2, just put a plus sign if you don't mind. So where are you the most creative in your life? Just type it in chat. And Shrikant, at your leisure, would you mind reading out these lovely answers?
Absolutely. So the first answer is 52 living ideas. The second one is ballet classes and teaching school. Folks, go ahead and put it, okay, next up is predictions. Next one is writing book and poetry. Next is jamming to Pink Floyd on my lead guitar. Folks, keep the answers coming. Anybody else? Full-on karaoke with active crowd and interacting with kids, especially strangers. Work as play, listening to music. All right, all right. Mike, you had one more question.
Yes, I do. This one I think is a little harder to answer. Is there an activity or a level or a place in your life that you are not achieving or producing? For example, I think, or I'm pretty sure, I want to act someday. So I might put in that chat, acting. Is there something that you want to do in the creative process that you are not doing or not doing at the level you would like? If you would have or take the time to answer that question, I would greatly appreciate it.
Right, please go ahead and type what you would like to do.
I might add dancing for my next one as well.
Not painting at all. Okay. Theater. Okay, not at the level I would like. Book and poetry. Okay, very nice. I would like to go back to choreographing. Dancing, dance, dancing, dancing. Wow. 3 dancing in the row. Some type of stand-up comedy and or improv. Wonderful.
Very
Oh, there was one more. Like to be more creative at work. Writing the book that clients keep asking me to write. Wonderful. Go ahead, Mike.
Shrikant, I noticed you didn't answer, and I know you don't like to usually put your opinion in these things. Would you answer just one of the questions if you could?
One of the questions?
Yes.
No, don't. I mean, I'm going to make a very radical statement just
Okay.
The breakout rooms. So
Okay.
I'll hold my fire for that.
Okay, very good. So hopefully you got a chance to hear and or read some of the answers, because now you know what's here tonight, right? This is such a huge topic about participating more or producing more of the content than consuming it. But at least now you have a feel for who's here collectively and who's going to be with you in the breakout room. So let me continue. Another idea, or I'll call it more of an interplay that I came across studying the topic, was the difference between the word work and play. And there's a great distinction there. Even in the title of the meetup, we called it All the World's a Stage. Are you ready to play? So in the English language, you don't hear, I'm going out to work golf, or I work the sax or the piano in a band. What you normally hear is I'm going out to play golf, or I'm going out to play the sax or the piano. But something very interesting happened, and this is very similar, something of a callback to you being the audience member that has a responsibility to elevate your game as the receiver of information. The same thing happens in this work-play balance. For example, I play golf. I'm not very good. I have a very high handicap. But if I want to play golf at a higher level, I need to work. What I found here is I looked through things in my life, I talked to some other people, that work usually precedes the play. And if you can somehow get the work done, and then when it's time for you to perform, put yourself more in a play mode, because that's childish, right? Then you start playing golf sometimes like you don't care. If you talk to a golfer, for example, when they hit the ball purely, and I know Jeff is a golfer, there may be others here. This happens in so many sports, that when that ball is hit correctly, the golfer almost doesn't feel the contact. The ball just goes. So I'm obviously leading toward the idea of flow. So I want to play the saxophone. Okay. So why are you not playing the saxophone? Well, because I was in a band when I was young. Okay, you can still play the saxophone, but I think it was very important to remember that the work has to come first. And then all of a sudden you create this very nice loop for yourself, where I put the time in on the instrument, and then it turns out that slight elevation puts me, first of all, in a higher category when I'm in the audience. And then as a sax player, I'm now able to do what? To play with musicians that are closer to my new level. So everybody who, for example, wrote in the chat, I see 3 in a row. So dancing, dance, dancing. So if we just took a timeout, a quick mental timeout, and we kind of played around with those two words, play, work. You wanted to dance, but you're not dancing. So what could you do? What could you do? So that when you showed up at the next wedding, you're not going to have somebody pulling on your sleeve to get you up. Maybe it'll be the opposite. Will you'll pull on theirs? It really is just a question of stepping back, ask a very simple question. What do I want to do? I want to dance. Okay, at what level? Do you want to dance so that you're comfortable? Maybe you learn different types of dances. Okay, it requires what? A little bit of work, and then surround yourself with people that are like us, where we're not afraid to say, this is something that I want to do. Well, I'm looking around, I know Allison has a great deal of experience and knowledge about dancing. Well, I have access to that now. So what's stopping me from taking that step? I mentioned earlier, I think I may want to do some dramatic acting. I do improv comedy at an amateur level, and that scares the hell out of me. But I want a little bit more. I want to actually find out what it feels like to be on a stage in a dramatic role, which kind of leads me into another section. It's something that I'm calling elevating your own status, where I think we have this habit sometimes of, as we're watching the creative process, whatever it might be, you could be a sports fan, you're watching dance, gymnastics, music, a conversationalist, someone giving a speech. It doesn't matter what it is. We have this tendency of looking at the top and comparing ourselves. At least I've gone through this process. I shouldn't speak for all of you, but I look up sometimes and I go, wow, that's a long way up. But I'm cheating myself, because if I can sum up the courage to get on stage. Now, I've done a little bit of improv, which has done what for me? I've been in an audience where I felt uncomfortable, and I've been able to deliver the creative process. So how much of a switch would it be for me to go from practicing improv comedy in maybe trying out for a local play? What is really the switch? I'll have coaching, as long as I don't point to the stars and say to myself, do I need to be the next Laurence Olivier? Do I really need to do it? No, I don't. What I need to do is be able to tell my friends, hey, I'm actually putting on a play next week with a local theater group. Come check it out. That's a huge step for me. But what I found thinking about it is, what do you feel like inside if you project yourself being on stage as an actor? Well, I have news for you. It's probably no worse than a pro who is on theater on Broadway. They have years and years and years of experience. So yeah, you may feel amped up, but elevate yourself. Why don't you pretend that, yeah, you know what? I am on Broadway. I don't think that it's really that big of a shift. I think you should take aim at the stage and then take these little steps that you acquire from listening to people like us. There are actors here. I've seen them here before. I know Maxine is co-presented with me. So I have access to someone who could I pick up the phone, ask some advice, and then guess what happens? I'm no longer just consuming the acting content. I'm going to start producing it. So as I look down this list, obviously from the first list, there's a lot of talented people here. And I look at the second list, my first reaction is, why not? So another area, going back years of my life, I played a lot of competitive softball. And my brother taught me something about softball a while ago that I thought was really interesting, and it fits well, I think. He said, we're never going to play in the World Series or in a professional stadium. That's not going to happen. But again, similar to the actor, I have played in local championships. I do, or I have felt the difference between playing a regular season game and a playoff game. There is a difference there. Again, going back to something like golf. You're not going to find me on the PGA Tour anytime soon. I'm pretty bad. But they have in golf something called a handicap system, which means if I'm playing somebody who's really good like Jeff, Jeff could give me a couple of strokes. We can go out on the golf course and I can participate in the same process that the pros are doing. So let's say I make a friendly bet of a slice of pizza with Jeff. I'm not playing for $1 million, but if I get a chance to make a putt on the 18th green, isn't it the same as the pro? It really is. I'm never going to putt at the Masters. So why can't, in my mind, create the fantasy of putting at the Masters? Now, if Jeff makes the putt that wins the match, he and I can talk about it the same way you see athletes reminiscing from years back when they go over the glory days of their time. So I'm trying to make the impression that having delved a little bit into this creative process, I left with a huge, as Shrikant would say, yes and attitude about this. Why not? Why not? I look forward to dancing at a wedding with Allison. Allison, will you marry me? I hope you don't. No, don't answer out loud. I don't want to be embarrassed. Let me conclude with this. I want to talk about something, let's call it the figurative stage. The literal stage or the arena is where you are playing baseball. It's the dance floor that you're on. It is the stage if some of you act. It is the bandstand. But I was thinking and spent a great deal of time thinking about the figurative stage. Out in our lives in the everyday world, are we not performing and adding creative content to each other's lives? I go out there a little bit on this one, to the point where I think every time I approach a bank teller, especially someone that I know, that to me, it feels much more like two actors that are playing, or two dancers that are dancing, or two musicians that are riffing off one another, as opposed to me putting money in the damn bank. To me, that is a figurative stage. I was at my brother's this weekend, 4th of July barbecue, and there was a newborn there, 3 months. And the grandmother of the child was engaging this 3-month-old in a way that I had never seen done before. Not everybody can do that, to engage a young infant, because what does that require you to do? You need to sit there, you need to make funny faces, you need to play with your lips, you need to take their toes and move them around. Is she not acting there? Can I make the claim that that's a figurative stage? That's a chance for her to go into that creative process? And have you ever gotten the feeling, I don't know if any of you are not comfortable holding a baby, do you ever wish that you were? I am now because of my goddaughter, but before she was born, as many years ago, if you put a baby in my hand, you might as well put like a ton of bricks. It felt so awkward. But I think it's the same process. It's the idea of creating the stage for yourself and then just taking those initial steps toward you producing the content. So Shrikant, I will leave it at there. I hope I have set the stage to at least say that I'm a big fan of participation and of helping all of us get to different levels.